Canadian football fans, and welcome to part 2 of our look at the 1990 CFL All-Stars. In part 1, we looked at the Western Division, headed up by the first place Calgary Stampeders, Grey Cup runners-up, the Edmonton Eskimos, a very talented Saskatchewan Rough Riders team, and the lowly BC Lions. The link for part 1 is in the upper right corner, as well as in the description. If you haven't watched it, check it out right now. And of course, much like part 1, we'll be going over who made the All-Canadian team, and who fills out the rest of this chart. Before we get into it, let's take a look at 1990 in Canadian sports. Of course, while the Eskimos were Grey Cup finalists elsewhere in Edmonton, their other major sports club, the Edmonton Oilers of the NHL, won their 5th Stanley Cup in 7 seasons, appearing in 6 finals in the last 8 seasons to boot. This was huge, as it was after the departure of all-time great Wayne Gretzky. Team captain Mark Messier helped pick up the team's spirits once again after a downtrodden season in 1988-89, and led his team back to the top of the mountain. He had a banner year, career best 129 points, win the Hart Trophy as League MVP and the Pearson Trophy as Players' Choice MVP. But the show stealer of the playoffs was Brandon, Manitoba native goaltender Bill Ranford, who was sensational in net, and because of that he was awarded the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP. The LA Kings, Gretzky's now home, had a very disappointing season, but Wayne still collected his 8th scoring title of his 11-year NHL career, with a monster 142 points despite missing 7 games. It was also not a great year for the Pittsburgh Penguins, led by Montreal native, the magnificent one, Mario Lemieux. After finally making the playoffs for the first time in 7 seasons in 1989, the Pens missed the postseason this year, and despite missing 21 games due to nagging back issues, Lemieux still notched 123 points, 4th best in the NHL. But his big moment that year came at the All-Star game, which was in Pittsburgh. He opted not to sit out despite all the pain he was in. He could barely tie his skates, and knew how important it was to the fans and the city itself, and he scored 4 goals and was named Game MVP. In another reversal the year prior, the Detroit Red Wings, after winning 2 straight division titles, fell apart completely and finished dead last in the Norris Division. But Steve Yzerman still had another 100-point season, and he played for Team Canada at the 1990 World Championships. Despite not achieving a gold medal, he led the entire tournament in scoring and was named the best forward of the tournament. And a couple of Quebecois boys were big winners. Montreal-born Raymond Bourque of the Boston Bruins took home his 3rd Norris Trophy as the league's top defenseman, while Quebec City native Patrick Roy of the Montreal Canadiens took home his 2nd straight and overall Vezina Trophy as the league's top goaltender. And Belleville, Ontario boy Rick Meagher, undrafted, fought his way to get into the league and fought his way to have a career. All the way to being captain of the Blues at this point, at the age of 36, took home the Selke Trophy as the league's top defensive forward. At the juniors, the 1990 World Junior Hockey Championship that is, it was won by Team Canada for the 3rd time in the last 6 tournaments. And taking the gold, led by players such as leading scorer of the tournament Dave Chazowski of Edmonton, Alberta, as well as players who go on to have excellent NHL careers, including defenseman Patrice Brisebois, Stu Barnes, and Scarborough, Ontario native Mike Ricci, and London, Ontario 16-year-old sensation Eric Lindros. But Lindros' big breakout in juniors was his role in the Oshawa Generals, and he came alive in the playoffs that year in the OHL, leading the Generals to the J. Robertson Cup title, which was the OHL Championship. It was their 3rd in 8 seasons. He had 36 points in 17 playoff games, more than 2 points a game. But he didn't stop there. At the Memorial Cup in Hamilton, Ontario, he had 9 assists in 4 games, leading the Generals to the first national title since 1944, 46 years. And he was named to the tournament All-Star team. This new phenom now had the attention of every scout in the NHL. In the world of baseball, it was a heartbreaking year for the Toronto Blue Jays. A year removed from winning the AL East title in 1989, the team fell short by a mere 2 games to the Boston Red Sox. But better days were indeed ahead. But a bright spot was 3rd baseman Kelly Gruber being awarded a Silver Slugger and Gold Glove Award. As for Montreal, the Expos finished 85-77, which was sadly only good enough for 3rd place, but was still an improvement over the prior 2 seasons. And they had 2 Gold Glove winners in 1st baseman Andres Galarraga and 3rd baseman Tim Wallach. And they also have a new young Canadian-born prospect on their club, 23-year-old Maple Ridge, BC native, right fielder Larry Walker. Canada also took the spotlight at the World Figure Skating Championships at home this year in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Kurt Browning, of course, of Rocky Mountain House, Alberta, took home his 2nd straight gold medal in the men's program. While in the Paris program, Isabelle Brasseur of Quebec and Lloyd Eisler of Ontario took home the silver and would go on to Olympic success. And yes, I feel curling should finally get its love. The 1990 Labatt Brier, held in Sault Ste. Marie that year, was won by skip Ed Wernick of Team Ontario. The first title for Wernick the wrench, that is, since 1983, and he'd go on to win the Men's World Curling Championships that same year in Sweden. 26-year-old Alison Goring of Toronto, Ontario, in her first Scott Tournament of Hearts appearance in Ottawa, took home the championship for Ontario as well, and made an appearance at the 1990 World Curling Women's Championship, taking home a bronze. And now, on to the football. Everything went crazy and opposite from last season in 1989. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers actually take hold of the East and the entire league with their league best 12-6 record, rebounding from a rough season last year in 1989, and they took it all the way to the Grey Cup with depth on both sides of the ball and won it for the second time in 3 seasons and the third time in 7 seasons, throttling the Edmonton Eskimos 50-11 in Vancouver at BC Place. The Toronto Argonauts also rebounded from a pretty rough season as well from 1989 with an excellent 10-8 record with an insanely amazing offense. The CFL record 689 points scored. They scored 40-plus points in 9 out of their 10 wins, including reaching 60-plus 3 times, and one game they even reached 70. But the Bombers' defense contained them well with a thrilling 2017 win in the Eastern Final. The Ottawa Rough Riders, who've been a proverbial laughingstock for years in the Canadian Football League, still aren't that great, but show signs of life, finishing 7-11, reaching 7 wins for the first time since 1985. That was also the last time they made the playoffs until this season. But the Argos down on 35-24 in the Eastern semis in the Skydome. But the biggest disappointment in the entire league, I would say, was the last place in the East, Hamilton Tiger Cats, indeed finishing dead last with a 6-12 record. After finishing 12-6 the year prior, doing a complete 180, and they even made it to the Grey Cup last year, and only lost at the last second. This is the first time the Cats have missed the playoffs since 1977. At the time, before this season, they had the second longest active playoff streak, only second to Edmonton. And now the Bombers take that mantle, having made the playoffs in 11 straight seasons. But now, let's look at the East All-Stars starting on special teams. And we start off with a biggie at special teams. The returner going to Toronto, and that's Argos' new sensation, Mike Pinball Clemens. 5'6", barely 170 pounds, and overlooked by so many teams in the pro football world, was so constantly he would never make it, but he would get killed in any given game, in any given league. But his heart couldn't be stopped, neither could his iron will. At the age of 24 in 1989, he wowed Argos coaches enough with his skill and his passion for the game, and the losses of everyone else in football was the Argos' gain. Great speed, superb moves, even a Mexican luchador wrestler would be jealous of. And, well, he was agile, energetic, fooling tacklers, and the name Pinball, of course, comes from the fact that he could bounce off tacklers. And before they even realized who bounced off them, they couldn't even take him down because he'd already be gone a few extra yards. The Argos' record-breaking offense was built around him, and their success was a major part due to Pinball. He set a CFL record with a combined total of 3,300 all-purpose yards. On the punt return, no matter how quick tacklers got there, they couldn't keep up. And he led the league in punt return yards with 1,045. And now kickoff returns, he racked up 831, bolting for third best. He totaled 14 touchdowns, tied for fourth best in the CFL. And rushing? Well, he could do that too. He ran for 519 yards. And he was more dangerous than anything on short passes. He could fool defenses by going long or staying short, but 905 yards receiving, and had great hands and very seldom dropped the ball. And his 72 receptions were 6th best in the league. All this was why he was awarded the CFL's Most Outstanding Player to go with his first All-Star selection, and he became just the 3rd Argonaut player in the history of the award to win it. And yes, of course this means Pinball gets his first All-Canadian selection as well. And we moved to punter, and to the Grey Cup champion Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And the great Bob Cameron. From Ancaster, Ontario, he became the Bombers punter in 1980 and became one of the all-time greats at the position, always making sure to put every bit of momentum he could behind his kicks. He always gave the Bombers an extra edge when it came to offenses, while it's keeping offenses deep, allowing the Bombers and their talented defense to do some damage. He was great at angling kicks away from better returners in the league, and he was also pretty good against bad weather elements. And in Winnipeg, that was a fair bit often late in the season. He always found a way to get the job done. His 6,724 punting yards led the entire league. So did his 10 punt singles, putting points on the board to boot. And on top of that, he averaged 42 yards a punt, which was 3rd best. And this all led him to win his third Grey Cup with the Bombers, the prior two coming in 1984 and 1988. This is his third consecutive All-Star selection and fourth overall, the first of which coming in 1984. And indeed, this is also his third straight and overall All-Canadian selection. The East takes all but one special team spot with 2. But who takes the kicker spot for the East, you wonder? Well, for kicker, we go to the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and one of the few bright spots they had this year, the man affectionately known to fans across the Steel City as Ozzy, Paul Osbaldiston. A kicker known for his clutch abilities in high-pressure situations and always excelling in them, he had accuracy when it came to making field goals and putting points on the board for his club. So much so that his 83.9 field goal percentage led the entire CFL. Ozzy faced pressure like few others at crucial moments of any given game, be it a key tie or a key win at the last second. He wanted to not split the uprights, and he totaled 212 points in kicking this year, second best mark of all time. And as told in Part 1, Dave Ridgway tied the CFL record with 233 points, which Ozzy set in 1989, which was his prior All-Star selection, this being his second. He played with pure focus, and his team relied on him despite their rough year. And he was actually a finalist for the CFL's most outstanding Canadian player. And now, we move to defense and start with the defensive line. And at defensive end, we go to the Ottawa Rough Riders and the punishing Greg Stuman. One of the reasons behind Ottawa's improvement was the acquisition of this star rush end. A 2-time All-Star in 1987 and 88 with the Lions, and after a string in Edmonton, came to the nation's capital, achieving his third selection. He had quickness, agility, and unrelenting force when it came to bringing QBs down, as his 13 sacks were fourth best in the league and very evident of his abilities. And it didn't matter if a quarterback was in the pocket or a scrambler. QBs would be smart to avoid him at all costs, and when they didn't, well, it didn't end well for them. But even when a running back could try to fool him, or someone catching a short pass, he was there to make the stop and make sure they didn't gain any yardage. He added 59 tackles and 2 fumble recoveries to boot. And in addition to that, is also his third All-Canadian selection of his career. At the other defensive end spot, it's Grover Covington of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, the CFL's Minister of Defense. Well, he got off to a great start this season, but injuries caused him to miss several games, but by the end, he was finding his footing again. This is his 6th consecutive All-Star selection dating back to 1985 and the 7th of his career, the first being his first CFL season in 1981. He had a ferocious style, a fearless spirit, and passion for the game. He had 7 sacks in 13 games and garnered 34 tackles and a fumble recovery. He still gave the Steel City faithful something to cheer for in a rough year. And he could crush the best QBs and foil the best of them, causing them to make many mistakes to benefit his club in the few wins they would garner. This would be his last All-Star selection, however, as injuries mounted again the next season in 1991, where he only played 5 games and would retire thereafter, having spent his whole career with the Tiger Cats. And he retired as the CFL's all-time quarterback sack leader, which as of 2025 still stands with 157. And we head back to Ottawa for defensive tackle and the Rough Riders' Lloyd Lewis. Like Stuman, Lewis was relied on to improve the O-Riders' defense, but unlike Stuman, he's been fighting in the defensive trenches for the Riders since joining the CFL in 1985. He has been a constant highlight for this struggling and almost a joke of a club. This is his second All-Star selection of his career, which indeed was in 1985. But he truly was getting into his best years in the CFL at this point. He was pretty quick for his size, and was able to pressure both quarterbacks and running backs, making them falter. He could tackle for losses, as many of his 30 total did just that. He added 5 sacks and a fumble recovery. He's also a blocker's worst nightmare in many games due to his furious play. But he always kept things under control. And for the final defensive line spot, we go to the Toronto Argonauts, who, despite being known for their offense, had a talented defense too. And one of those awesome talents was Harold Hallman at defensive tackle. 6 feet, 240 pounds, he was often outmatched in terms of size, but very rarely outmatched in terms of results. He could push through any given offensive lineman regardless of their size, and once in a QB's face, he'd fluster them or bring them down to the turf. Either way, he'd make things happen for his club. His 9 quarterback sacks were tied in the CFL for 7th. His quickness and agility also allowed him to keep up with some of the fastest running backs in the game. This is the 4th All-Star selection. His first 2 came in Calgary in 1986 and 87. He joined the Argos during the 1988 season, then garnered his first All-Star selection as an Argo in 1989, and now does the same this year. On top of that, this is his 2nd straight and 3rd overall All-Canadian selection, the first being in his rookie year of 1986. The East tied the West with 2 defensive line selections. And now, we move to the linebackers. And we go back to the nation's capital in Ottawa and the Rough Riders. and the towering tackler Bruce Holmes. Another key to Ottawa's rebuild. Holmes was a former NCAA All-Big Ten All-Star with the Minnesota Golden Gophers and was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. He played 3 games in KC in 1987 and was cut, tried out for the Browns, but ended up in Toronto where he spent 2 seasons with the Argos. But injuries and consistency issues caused him to be sent to Ottawa during the 1989 season, where he has now thrived. And he is a menace, but in a very good way. Well, most of the time. He had immense size on him and had one mode: tackle the ball carrier and tackle him hard and punish him. So much so he set a CFL record at the time, that is, for tackles in a season with 127. He had an old-school grit and unrelenting aggression, which was called into question after a questionable hit on Argo quarterback Ricky Foggy that actually got him suspended and missing the playoffs, more or less letting down his team. But he was the reason why the Ottawa Riders were excellent against the run, and he also recovered 2 fumbles and snagged 3 interceptions. This would be his first and only All-Star selection, but despite the record season, he was not selected as an All-Canadian. Very puzzling indeed. Many felt that the Ottawa Riders organization felt he was a liability after the hit on Ricky Foggy, and he went to the BC Lions in 1991, back to Toronto for 2 games in 1992, and made it to the NFL again in 1993 playing 1 game for the Vikings. But he left the game of football at the age of 28. And for the next spot, we shift to the Grey Cup champion and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Tyrone Jones. One of the most popular players in Bombers history, Jones was unpredictable, difficult to read, and loved to run his mouth to get the upper hand. He wasn't just good at producing plays, his mind games could also get the best of you. One of the greatest pass rushers in CFL history, he returned to the CFL after a brief stint with the Phoenix Cardinals in 1988. But he saw limited action for the Bombers in 89, but was back to his old self this season, achieving his 5th career All-Star selection, as he notched 4 straight from 84 to 87. He produced 11 sacks, which is the 5th best mark in the CFL, but it was his ability to also cause QBs to panic is what helped make him special. And this year he also added 43 tackles, many for losses, to running backs, 4 interceptions, as he was great at swatting passes in the air, and some of them landing in his arms, of course. And he added 2 fumble recoveries, won his 2nd Grey Cup and first since 1984, where he was actually defensive player of that game. Well, he played very well in the big game once again this year, and this would be his last All-Star selection. He played 1 more season in Winnipeg and then played a season each in Saskatchewan and BC, retiring after the 1993 season. And we stick to the Bombers and linebackers and the awesome Greg Battle. A true defensive marvel and a really cool name to boot, especially for a linebacker at his position. He combined all the right elements: strength, speed, tackling ability, play reading, extra pass coverage, blitz strategies, hard hitting, chasing runners down and ball carriers down. So strategic. It was a career year for the Bomber sensation as he notched 100 tackles, 5th best in the league. But his hits weren't just hard, they were intense. So much so he caused many fumbles and recovered 5 of them, which was 3rd best in the CFL. He would stun QBs with his pass covering abilities as well, with his 3 interceptions and breaking up or stuffing short pass patterns. He was every coach's dream and every opposing coach's worst nightmare. It was his savvy that led the Bombers to their Grey Cup win, and that day Battle had a career night where he had 2 interceptions, one of which stymied an Edmonton driver in the game deep in the Bombers zone, and he gave his team momentum for the 50-11 rout. And speaking of the score, well, his 2nd pick of the game was returned 34 yards for a touchdown, and with that was the Grey Cup's defensive MVP. And just a couple days before the big game, he won the CFL's most outstanding defensive player, which he was a finalist for the year before. And this is indeed his 2nd straight and overall All-Star selection. However, it's his first All-Canadian berth, as he's the East-only linebacker representative selection, and taking 1 out of 3 spots, of course. Now, we move to the secondary. And we stay with the Grey Cup champion Bombers and downtown Les Brown at cornerback. In his 7th season in the CFL and 2nd with the Bombers, he was one of the fastest and most well-paced defensive backs in the history of the game. His speed allowed him to keep up with the best and fastest receivers, and he could also keep up with any moves they might make, as he had amazing athleticism and stamina. His ability to read passing patterns and plays were uncanny. That's why he led the entire league with an incredible 14 interceptions. That was just 1 shy of tying a CFL record. And if he wasn't picking off passes, he was knocking them down or taking receivers down with tackles, causing incompletions, frustrating them into making mistakes on patterns. Brown was a headache for offenses all across the league, no matter how good or bad they were. He also added 43 tackles and 2 fumble recoveries. Brown collected his 2nd Grey Cup ring, having won with Hamilton back in 1986, but he didn't play in that game due to injury. Speaking of Hamilton, that's where his previous 2 All-Star selections came in both 1985 and 86, and this is the 3rd of his career and first as a Bomber. And it's also his 3rd All-Canadian selection of his career to boot. And we stay at corner and stay with the Grey Cup champion Bombers, and the other man on the other side, who is every bit as dangerous as Brown, completing that double trouble core, Rod Hill, the Prince of the Pickoff. Hill played 6 seasons in the NFL as a journeyman utility player, starting in Dallas in 82 for 2 seasons, spent 3 seasons in Buffalo, then a very brief stops in Detroit and LA for the Rams. He found a full-time spot in home in Winnipeg in 1988 and has truly been a dominant force ever since he stood up for the Bombers. He was second in the league with 12 interceptions. This is just ridiculous. As the Bomber defensive backcourt led the entire league with 48 picks. Hill was a different cat and a different style than Brown. While if he did have an open path, he could burst away with more yardage when he would make a pickoff, but he relied more on his size and toughness to irritate opposing receivers, but like his teammate, could frustrate catchers very easily and cause them to make very costly mistakes. And again, was very known with his great reach with his arms and a good tackler. He added 31 tackles, had a fumble recovery. And he also collects his 2nd Grey Cup ring, having won his first in his first CFL season in 1988 with the Bombers. This is his 2nd straight and overall All-Star selection. And same goes to the All-Canadian team, Hill proving to be among the greats of his era. Next, we go to halfback and Troy Wilson of the Ottawa Rough Riders. He started his career with a short stint in the NFL with the Browns, but joined Ottawa in 1987. He truly was a marvel at the position this season. He had sheer focus and great eye for both where the receiver was and where he knew the receiver was going to be, and never lose focus of where he was going. He was dangerous in every facet, and his speed was top-notch. His aggression, however, was even more of a highlight. He was tied for 4th in the CFL with 8 interceptions, which was amazing. He even returned one for a touchdown. However, he had 8 fumble recoveries, some of which he caused. There's this quickness to pounce on that ball and hold on to it those 8 times that gave him the CFL lead in fumble recoveries. On top of that, he added 47 tackles. However, after the season, he suddenly disappeared from the game of football at the age of 25, rumored due to injuries, but there's no confirmation, as this would be his first and only All-Star selection. But indeed, he made it count even more with an All-Canadian berth as well. Staying at halfback, we go to Toronto and the Argos and the great Don Wilson. Acquired from Edmonton in the offseason, he added a lot to an Argo defense that was still growing in many ways and still far from perfect. He was the perfect hybrid, however, of speed and toughness, and he loved to hit. He had 6 interceptions, which was tied for 10th best in the league. He averaged 22.3 yards a return and returned one for a touchdown. He had 64 tackles and would always run to where the ball was going to land, no matter what to lend a hand on a tackle. Sometimes the receiver would even have to pay a price for even catching the ball crossing his path. His hitting also caused many drop passes for incompletions. The Argos defense was coming together, and Wilson was a big reason for that. This is his 3rd straight and overall All-Star selection. The prior 2 were with the Eskimos. And this is his 2nd straight All-Canadian selection, as the East takes up 4 out of 5 defensive back spots, dominating the position this year on the All-Star team. But we still have one more for the defense and the defensive backs, and we go to safety. And to complete the defense, we go back to Ottawa and the awesome Scott Flagel as a safety for the Ottawa Rough Riders, joining Ottawa during the 1989 season in a trade from the Tiger Cats, and he had spent 6 seasons in Winnipeg prior to that, having the best years of his career. This may very well have been the best year of Flagel's career, the personal best 8 interceptions, which tied him for 4th best in the league with teammate Troy Wilson. An expert at covering the long ball, a reading of short pass patterns, also was great on the blitz and tackles. The Winnipeg native was a fierce competitor, with his eye on every single play without letting up. And he was a punishing hitter to boot, as I alluded to, a quick thinker as well. He was second to Wilson in the league with 6 fumble recoveries. He could cause incompletion several different ways. He had 41 tackles, and this would be his 5th career selection. So he had 3 straight with the Bombers from 85 to 87. This is his 2nd straight selection this year. And in total, the East wins the defensive side in selection 7-5. In 1989, however, it was even, and the East and West were tied with 6 each that year. The West hasn't beaten the East in defensive selection since 1986. So now we move to the offense and start with a gritty trenchman, the offensive lineman. And we start at center with Grey Cup champion Bombers of Winnipeg and Saskatoon-born Lyle Bauer. A popular fan favorite of the Bombers since joining them in 1982, was grossly underrated and overlooked as one of the best trenchmen in the league, as this was his first All-Star selection. Quick off the snap, agile, and excellent blocker, he's one of the most reliable Bombers players on the entire roster, let alone on that line. And he always showed a winning attitude and had great communication with his quarterbacks over his career, and this was no different, as he centered the third quarterback of his career for third different quarterback, I should say, of his career in the third Grey Cup, as yes, indeed, he did collect his third Grey Cup ring, winning with the Bombers in 84 and 88 as well. This would be his only career selection. He retired after the 1991 season. And we move to offensive guard and ferocious Dan Ferroni of the Toronto Argonauts. A native of Oakville, Ontario, pretty much a Toronto boy, he had become one of the most popular players in the team's long history. But the hearts of Argo fans were broken after his one-year stint in Calgary in 1989. He returned this year with open arms, of course, and was still at the top of his game in his 10th season. A tremendous leader, standing 6'2" and 255 pounds, he had the heart of a lion. His expert blocking ability showed it. He was great at reading defenders, and could indeed create a path for the likes of Pinball Clemens, as well as running QBs Matt Dunnigan and Ricky Foggy here on the roster. This is his 7th All-Star selection, as he had 5 straight with the Argos from 83 to 87, then one with the Stamps last season, and again this year. And on top of that, he garners his 4th All-Canadian selection with back-to-back selections in 84 and 85, and another in 87. The next selection over at guard is from the Ottawa Rough Riders and Gerald Roper. After spending 8 seasons in BC with the Lions, he was acquired during the 1989 season by Ottawa as part of their rebuild. That's a common theme you're seeing this year. And indeed, well, it became a significant part of it, of course. He implemented as part of Ottawa's drastically improved offense, led by Russian quarterback Damon Allen, who benefited either for a run or a pass play with plenty of time to throw, or an open path to run, and it was all down to Roper. And it drastically helped Ottawa's running game to boot, as well, with rookie Reggie Barnes having an amazing year with over 1,200 yards. 6'4", 255 pounds, and amazing arm strength made him a huge asset. This is his 3rd All-Star selection after having back-to-back with the Lions in 87 and 88. And we move to the offensive tackle position, but we stay with Ottawa, and Rob Smith, a CFL journeyman of 10 seasons, scratched and clawed his way throughout his career, and didn't get the recognition he truly deserved. In 1981, he began his career playing 1 game with the Lions. In 1982, played a game with the Argos, but that same year, he finally found a home with the Montreal Concords. He played 4 seasons there, then moved to Calgary for 2 full seasons, and during his 3rd season with the Stamps, he went back to BC, then played a full season for the Lions in 89, and arriving in Ottawa now. And he'd, well, been underutilized much of his career, and as a result, never really stood out the way, again, he should have been recognized as such. But in Ottawa, he truly found a great home. And as it came to running on the outside, he was another key where Allen and Barnes followed. Like Roper, gave Allen ample time to either make running or passing plays. He was as hardworking as they came and finally got recognized with his 1st All-Star selection. And the last offensive line selection at offensive tackle is one of the best to ever do it. From the Grey Cup champion Bombers, it's the one and only Chris Wolby. 6'7", 325 pounds. He was as nasty as they came when it came to blocking. A hometown hero playing in his 10th season, he truly embodied the spirit of the game and the Bombers' goals, with passion, skill, and aggression. He was also very strategic and cerebral, something he doesn't get enough credit for, and would go the extra mile against the best defenders in the league, and could read the opposing team's defensive strategies and where he thought they were going to go. He played to win and nothing less. For him, losing was not an option. And the times his team did lose, he'd be so hard on himself and drive himself to do better the next game, even if he had a good game himself in the prior loss. It didn't matter. He wanted to win. And when he did, he earned his 3rd Grey Cup ring, also playing on those 84 and 88 Bombers teams which I mentioned, but actually missed the 88 game due to injury. He's a CFL All-Star for the 6th time in his career, having done so 4 in a row from 84 to 87, and getting another last season. And this year, he is the runner-up for the CFL's most outstanding offensive lineman, an award he actually won back in 1987. And on top of that, is also an All-Canadian for the 6th time in his great career. The East takes 2 out of 5 offensive line spots. But look at this offensive line here. This is an entire offensive line, All-Canadian that is, of Hall of Famers. Wow, we'll get to more of that later. Now we move to the receiving corps. We begin at slot back and stay with the champion Bombers. Burnaby, BC native, 12-year veteran Rick House. At the age of 33, he's still superb and had one of the best seasons of his entire career. He had some of the best hands in the CFL, and with his short patterns, he could turn around, catch the ball before any defensive backs even knew it, and take off for extra yardage. He could make the most out of any catch, and was actually key in short yardage situations. But there'd be times he'd be called upon to make those up-the-middle patterns to gain a bit longer yardage. And he was still as efficient as ever. His 883 yards receiving were the third best mark of his career. His 63 catches tied his personal best in 1982. His 8 touchdowns were also his second personal best. And he wins his third Grey Cup, having won with the Bombers in 84. However, his second was with the Eskimos in 1987, but he returned to Winnipeg last season and this year achieves his very first All-Star selection. It would be his only one. He played one more season and retired afterwards. We stay at slotback and head back to Toronto and the Argos and that phenomenal offense and the phenomenal Darryl K. Smith. He had a one-of-a-kind season, which is fitting for a one-of-a-kind talent. Him and Pinball were the keys to this team being so dominant on the offensive side of the ball. He had the size of a slotback, but the speed of a wideout. He was the perfect receiver and could play both positions. Quick hands, long reach, could make highlight reel passes, burning defensive backs on the long ball, fooling everyone on the short patterns. Go up the middle, down the sidelines, all the way to the end zone. You name it, he could do it. But even the biggest Argos fans, as good as Smith was, this being actually his fourth straight and overall All-Star selection, they never could have even imagined the type of season he'd have. This record-setting Argo offense, oh my goodness. Smith, 1,826 yards receiving, which led the entire league and was the third best receiving season of all time, behind Hall of Famer Hal Patterson in 1956 for the Montreal Alouettes, and former Argo and Hall of Famer Terry Greer, who at the time, in 1990, was the only receiver to ever reach 2,000 yards. Smith had 93 catches, which was third best, averaged 19.6 yards a catch, which was also third best, and set a CFL record, 20 receiving touchdowns, breaking Eskimos great and Hall of Famer Brian Kelly's record of 18, and also tying the CFL record overall touchdowns set by Pat Abruzzi of the Montreal Alouettes in 1955. And in addition to that, he is, of course, an All-Canadian for the second time in his career, having done so in 1987. And now we move to the wideouts, the wide receiver, finally back to the Hamilton Tiger Cats with the ever-popular and exciting Earl the Pearl Winfield. He is indeed one of the most exciting and talented receivers of his era. When a pass was soaring through the air, headed to good old number one, Ivor Stadium would begin to stand up out of their seats in anticipation to see what Earl would do. He was a man TSN loved to show on their nightly sports desk highlights. Hamilton's local CHCH Channel 11 News were eager to show what Earl would do in their sports reports. He was a master of the long ball. Speed was the name of his game, and his hands are what perfected it. The Cats offense had a lot of injury issues this season, were probably the best part of the team. Earl himself even missed 5 games. But in the 13 games he did play, he caught 1,054 yards, which was 9th best in the league, and averaged 17 yards a catch, which was tied for 8th best, and his 13 receiving touchdowns were 3rd. This is his second All-Star selection, having achieved as such in 1988. And now we head back to the nation's capital on the Ottawa Rough Riders and Stephen Jones. Ottawa really spent their time and money rebuilding this club, and it's paying off, as I mentioned now a few times. But Jones was acquired for the Edmonton Eskimos and was one of the most underrated receivers in the league, and he did have some injury problems. A true whiz in left field, he was a coach's dream and a thinking man's receiver. A very gifted talent, and also exciting to watch himself. He brought depth and skill to the old Riders team that was in dire need of it for a long time. He helped give quarterback Damon Allen the star receiver he needed to excel with, as the two were former teammates actually in Edmonton. Speaking of which, Jones' 1,182 yards is the best of his career, and the first time since winning the Grey Cup with Allen in 1987 that he reached the millennium mark. It was also the 4th best total in the entire league. His incredible 20 yards a catch, as his speed was arguably maybe the best in the entire CFL, was 2nd best in the league. He caught 11 touchdown passes, which was 6th best, and it's his very first All-Star selection. On top of that, his first All-Canadian selection. So the East and West split the receiver selections 2 each. The East itself had all 4 teams with at least one All-Star receiver. And now we head to the backfield. And we head to, surprise, surprise, Grey Cup champions, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and fullback Warren Hudson. A native of Oakville, Ontario, this bulldozing brute force was key in the Bombers' success all season. And he was indeed a major part of the Bombers' backfield battalion, and while his 270 yards rushing and 490 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns are nothing to sneeze at, it was actually his role as a blocker that truly got him recognized, as he really helped out his teammates a great deal, including a man we're about to mention after him, that allowed the Bombers' offense and ground game to dominate. He's also key in his QBs thriving this year. He was also an asset in key short yardage situations, using his size and strength to power through to get those important yards or inches for a key first down. He was dependable for any given situation. This is his first selection. Hudson played a beauty in the Grey Cup, not only achieving his first Grey Cup ring, but 2 touchdowns, one each on receiving and rushing, and was named the game's Canadian MVP. And to the next spot, as I alluded to, the Bombers take both East backfield selections, and it goes to running back Robert Mims. The Bombers needed a top-notch running back as their running game hadn't been consistent in a while, and Mims looked like the guy they wanted. And the gamble proved to be worth it. His first year in the CFL, he was a wizard. His 1,341 yards rushing led the entire league. He had quick moves, could dodge or even escape a tackle when he was grabbed onto, and wasn't afraid to use a stiff arm, and was quick to change directions efficiently. Short yardage, long yardage, he was often capable of hitting his marks. He hit the end zone 8 times this year, 6 on the rush, and 2 catches. Speaking of catches, Mims' short yardage catches were also key in the Bombers' strategic aspect of moving the ball and killing the clock, and Mims was a master of that. He had 71 receptions, which was actually 7th best in the league, and totaled 538 yards receiving. His excellent play was key in the playoffs, leading to the Grey Cup win. This is his first All-Star selection. And, of course, being the league's best runner, he was named to the All-Canadian team as well. The backfield selections get 1 each in the East and West, and the East score 5 out of 12 overall selections on offense. Not bad at all. But we still have one more selection to go, and that, of course, is the pivot, the QB. Hey, surprise! It's the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the champions, and their quarterback, Tom Burgess. The Bombers ended in 1989 in a bad way when it came to their QB situation, despite having a very talented offense. But now we enter Tom Burgess, who entered the CFL in 1986 with Ottawa, but the team was going nowhere. He ended up on a rebuilding Saskatchewan club in 1987 and was key on their re-emergence. But in the 1989 Grey Cup, he was forced to watch on the sidelines as teammate Kent Austin led the Riders to their first Grey Cup victory in 23 years. Indeed, Austin, of course, was this year's All-Canadian quarterback selection. But Burgess got his chance to be the numero uno guy with a career year this season in Winnipeg. He was strategic, cerebral, and knew how to command the type of offense that puts points on the board and runs time off the clock. The Bombers had a dangerous receiving core, and Burgess had so many weapons. And the way he fooled opposing defenses, utilizing them throughout a given game, spreading out the wealth, if you will. And even when some of them recovered heavily, again, he just had so many options to go to that even the best defense couldn't always find a strategy to counter it. 5 Bombers players reached over 500 yards receiving, and 2 more had 400 plus. Again, spreading things out was key to the strategy and made him a success, and the Bombers perfected it. But they needed the right guy to do it, and they knew they could, and they found him in Burgess. And counted up the stats. 3,958 yards passing, 3rd best. 25 touchdown passes, 4th best. And his efficiency is truly what made him remarkable. 330 completions and a 57.5% completion percentage, both 2nd best in the CFL. And in addition to that, in addition to his first All-Star selection, he gets his 2nd Grey Cup ring, but actually got to play on this one. And he led the 50-11 route of the Eskimos with 3 touchdown passes and was named Offensive MVP of the big game. Well, if you thought 10 Hall of Famers on the West side was impressive, the East has 11 Hall of Famers out of the 27 selections here. Overall in the league in the East and West, totaling 21 out of 54. That is incredible. The CFL's all-time sack leader, Grover Covington, well, should have been a first ballot, but he only waited a few extra years before being inducted in 2000. He was the first of this all-star pack in the East to do so. And the champion Bombers, they take the next 3 spots. As even the CFL's all-time interception leader had to wait a little bit to get inducted, Les Brown got the call to the Hall in 2002. Offensive line superstar Chris Walby only had to wait 1 extra year, being inducted in 2003. Linebacker Greg Battle waited 3 years after eligibility, as he was enshrined in 2007. 1 year later, 2008, Mike Pinball Clemens, the Argos icon, took his rightful spot in the Hall, waiting a couple of years. Back to Winnipeg, as punter Bob Cameron only waited a couple of years himself and was inducted in 2010, rare honor for punters. And Bomber legend Tyrone Jones inexplicably took more than a decade to be inducted in 2012, due to voter ineptitude if you ask me. The poor guy wasn't even around to see it as he passed away in 2008 due to brain cancer at the age of 46. A year later, in 2013, the QEW saw both sides get an inductee each, both having waited a fair bit. Dan Ferroni, the star offensive lineman of the Argos, and star receiver of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, Earl Winfield. Don Wilson of the Argos waited over 15 years, but got the call to the Hall in 2021. And the one Ottawa induction from this class is Scott Flagel, who has waited nearly 30 years, will finally take his rightful place in the Hall of Fame in 2025. I mentioned in a prior video covering 1987 that he should have been inducted long ago. Well, the Grey Cup champion Bombers have a whopping 5 inductees. The second place Argos have 3. The Ticats take 2. As I mentioned, Ottawa with 1. But Ottawa perhaps should maybe have some more. And you could argue for some of these cases. Like the West, there are at least 8 men on the eastern side who may have been overlooked. And again, 4 of them from Ottawa. Greg Stewman is a 4-time All-Star, had 87 career sacks. He was once the CFL's most outstanding defensive player in 1987. Some who achieved less have made the Hall. His defensive line teammate, Lloyd Lewis, is someone who may have been overlooked as well. 5-time All-Star with 83 career sacks. And there have been some fans in Ottawa who feel that he even got overlooked some seasons when it came to All-Star selections. Rob Smith has come up in debate at times as well when it comes to the great offensive linemen of his era. Some say that it's because he only garnered 4 All-Star selections in 14 seasons and that goes against him. Well, again, he may have been overlooked during his days in Montreal, but he did win the CFL's most outstanding offensive lineman once, and was key in BC's run to the Grey Cup, and he may deserve another look, when that was of course 94, where he garnered a ring. Some have also argued for Stephen Jones, the star receiver. I don't know. In 10 seasons, he did have 4,000-yard campaigns and another over 900, so that's very impressive, and again, many receivers who have accomplished such as that are in the Hall of Fame. He was a 3-time All-Star, has a Grey Cup ring, but just had too many injury-plagued seasons, it seems. I'd say the best cases for Ottawa, if anyone's going to get in, will be Lewis or Smith. But 2 Argo players should most definitely be in the Hall of Fame, and I say that as a Ticat fan. It's puzzling Harold Holman isn't in. 8 seasons, was an All-Star 5 times, and was a huge part of the Argos' 1991 Grey Cup win, had 82 career sacks in that short career. And sadly, he did pass away due to surgical complications in 2005 at the young age of 43. And I'm sorry, but it's also outright ridiculous that Darrell K. Smith is in the Hall of Fame. Again, All-Star 5 straight seasons, 1,000 yards in 4 of them, another season over 950, a Grey Cup. Again, he accomplished this all in 8 seasons. And then sadly, he too has since passed away of cancer at the age of 55 in 2017. And we move south of the QEW to Hamilton. And kicker Paul Osbaldiston. But again, football is just very weird in general, both the NFL and CFL, when it comes to honoring kickers. But Ozzy was a 7-time All-Star. As of 2025 is still 4th all-time in field goals made. He's 4th all-time in punting yards. And he's won 2 Grey Cups, played in 4 total. And is 3rd all-time in kicking points. Again, being a kicker, he may never got the call, but he sure as hell deserves one. And you know what? Even the Bombers deserve one more, perhaps. Despite only playing 5 seasons, Rod Hill was dominant. He had 47 interceptions, in his career, averaging just under 9.5 a year. That's ridiculous. He was a 3-time All-Star, and probably could have been an All-Star in the 2 seasons he wasn't, because he had great years then too. He has 2 Grey Cups, and as of July 2025, still holds the CFL record for 5 interceptions in 1 game. Well, now we go to the numbers on the East, and it is indeed, to the surprise of literally no one, that the Bombers led the way with 11, 6 on offense, 4 on defense, and 1 on special teams. They were great on all sides of the ball. Their offense, however, leads the East as well. But what's puzzling is Ottawa. Now, don't get me wrong, many of their selections are clearly well-deserved, and they were fantastic players, and they drastically improved from their last several seasons. But the fact is, they still only won 7 games, and they garnered 8 selections? 3 on offense and led the whole East with 5 on defense. I mean, their defense was really good, but I don't know if it was better than Winnipeg. And again, the Bombers did have a better core. But the big head scratcher is the Argos. And I'm a Ticat fan. The Argos, I don't know, they might have gotten screwed this year. They had that record-setting offense and only had 2 selections on that side. Are you kidding me? And their defense wasn't really all that stellar. I mean, it was good, but not great. Okay, here's the thing. The Argos went through a roller coaster of quarterbacks due to injury, so of course they're not going to win that slot. And it was probably a coin flip to give the receiver spot to either Jeff Boyd of the Argos or Earl Winfield of the Ticats. They each reached 1,000 yards. Earl Winfield finished 1 yard better, but he played in less games, making it seem more impressive, and had a better average overall to boot. And also, we have to keep in mind, Pinball Clemens provided most of the offensive goodness along with D.K. Smith, and he was chosen as a special team selection. So I guess you can see why maybe the Argos didn't get a lot of offensive selection, but still, it just doesn't seem right. and they come in overall in third with 5. And the dead last Ticats are the dead last in selections with 3, but got 1 each on offense, defense, and special teams. And now the all-Canadian totals. Well, indeed, it makes sense the Bombers, as the champs and with the best record in the league in the regular season, have the most all-Canadian selections with 6, 2 on offense, 3 on defense, and 1 on special teams. The Bombers' 3 defensive selections are the most as well. The Bombers led the All-Canadian pack for the first time since 1987, and the 6th time, however, in 10 seasons. Grey Cup finalists Edmonton, fittingly, are tied for second with 5, 3 on offense, 2 on defense. And despite their questionable division total, the Argos can at least take solace in the fact that all 5 of their All-Star selections were all-Canadian. And again, to recap, 2 on offense, 2 on defense, and 1 special teams. Coming in 4th, however, is Saskatchewan with 4 selections, 3 on offense and 1 on special teams. The 3 offensive selections tie the Eskimos with the most all-Canadian picks. Coming in 5th was Ottawa, again with 3 all-Canadian selections after having none 4 seasons in a row from 86 to 89. Tied for 6th is Calgary and BC. The Stamps had 2, both on defense, which is questionable for a team that had the 2nd best record in the league. The Lions had 2 each, 1 on offense, 1 on defense. And the dead last team in the league, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, with the worst record, have no all-Canadian selections. That is the first time it's happened to them since 1975. Well, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 1990 All-Canadian team. Almost dead even this year. But the edge out on special teams was the factor, and the East had more overall selections than the West this season with 14 to 13. That was the same margin the West won with last season in 1989. And this is the East's first totals win since 1987. So, that does it for our look at the 1990 CFL All-Stars. A year full of legends and iconic players. What seasons would you like to see us cover in the future? Let us know in the comments below. Please like and share the video. Hit that subscribe button. And until next time, I'll see ya.